everybody, what's going on? Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Josh Cantwell, CEO at Freeland Ventures Real Estate Private Equity and strategicrealestatecoach.com. Thanks so much for joining me again on the Strategic Real Estate Coach interview and podcast series. And I'm excited to be with you today. You know, sometimes we do these events, these podcasts, and these interviews on my own, sort of a solo cast. Sometimes I have guests. Today I'm really excited to be with Sean Flanagan. Sean has been a real estate investor for over 20 years in some of the most competitive markets across the country. He's really an expert marketer and does a number of things with the different brands that he's built to license those brands to other real estate investors to build up their list of motivated sellers and their inbound leads. And as Sean and I were talking about getting ready for this, Sean's passionate for staying persistent in this business, and also for, finding ways to monetize all the different leads, all the different ways that deals come in, and making sure that you're not throwing away, 70, 80, 90% of your deal flow because, maybe you're only a wholesaler, maybe you're only a subject to guy, maybe you're only a rehabber, and deals don't fit inside your box. And so we'll talk to Sean a little bit more about how he monetizes every lead that comes into his business. Sean is a creative, unique real estate investor trying to find ways to monetize each and every deal. And he's, shared these systems with thousands of investors across the country. He's worked with some of my good friends, Patrick Riddle and JP Moses, to get some of the word out for some of his different training programs. And so we're looking forward to talking to Sean today. Sean, how you doing?
Doing good, Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So help me understand a little bit more, Sean. Help our audience understand. Tell us a little bit more about your business in today's market right now. What are you focused on? What are you most excited about in your real estate investing business?
Man, I'll tell you, my business has evolved a lot over the past couple of years. I've gone from being a full-time wholesaler and really owning one of the biggest wholesaling businesses in Central Florida to kind of steering it over to fix and flips and rehabs and stuff as the market kind of shifted, and now we're kind of moving towards a different strategy, which I'll get into in just a minute. But man, right now I tell you, we're crushing it most with creative real estate deals, right? Because the market's gotten so competitive. So that's where we're at right now, and we've got I'm still wholesaling, and basically the way things work on our end is I'm typically focused on buying fix and flips. We got 2 rehab crews that work for us full time, so I'll try and keep a couple deals going with them at all time, and then a few in the pipeline, and then we kind of cherry pick those and wholesale everything else. And we've gotten really good at it, especially recently, at turning leads that other people aren't wanting and leads that used to be kind of dead leads into profitable deals for us now. So that's where we're at. That's where my focus is, and things are rocking.
So Sean, tell me a little bit more about that. I know that we're going to talk a lot about creative real estate investing on this particular interview and podcast, but the market has gotten really competitive, and the market has in some areas softened a little bit with interest rates going up, and we've been on this 10-year boom, but things are really competitive in most markets still. And so a lot of investors are like, I can't find any deal flow, or there's nothing on the MLS. And there's an answer to that. The answer is find ways to attack every lead differently and make money from every lead. So just talk a little bit about what you've seen in the marketplace and how things have gotten more competitive, and why you thought in your own mind, in your own business, why you've got to get more creative and find more ways to make money from each deal. Because if you're just a fix and flip guy, a lot of the deal flow is not going to fit that box. Or if you're just a wholesaler, just a subject to guy, maybe things aren't going to fit in that box. So tell us about your passion for being creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do. My passion is for being creative and also for marketing. Lead generation. So we've got all these leads coming in all the time, and it just got to the point to where I'm seeing lots of leads come in that we're just throwing to the wayside, and we're wasting a lot of money. And as you said, Josh, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the market's so competitive. It's tough. I mean, we're going out and looking at leads, looking at houses and stuff, and we've got 10 other investors putting in offers on these houses, and thinking to myself, man, what about the ones where there's a decent amount of equity, but maybe not enough for me to actually close on the deal, with my cash or with private hard money or whatever, and then rehab it and take it through the whole process and then retail it. And there's also not enough spread for a wholesaler or another fix and flip buyer. How can we make money in between there? So that's what I've really had to start focusing on again over the past couple of years or so. And it's just, it's really helped because it's just so hard to generate good leads. So we're focusing on, and I actually call it, I kind of coined it and call it pre-wholesaling because, if you back up a minute, one of the challenges that we're facing right now is not just that the market's been so hot, but also that people have realized, it's no secret that you can play the middleman, come in with no cash or credit or whatever, and very limited amount of understanding and know-how, and go in and put a house under contract and then turn around and flip that contract to another end buyer, right? So that's become really, really popular as the years have gone on. And I've lately been focusing on how can I get out of that rat race? How can I get our company out of that rat race? And so what we've done is we've gone back to a technique that I used years and years ago when I started, two plus decades ago now. But taking over payments and then getting the deed on a property, which is probably the easiest way to say it, subject to type stuff. And the reason why I kind of joke around and call it pre-wholesaling now is just because, as I was explaining a minute ago, wholesaling has gotten so competitive, and now you've got wholesalers who are crushing it, and then you've got beginners who are trying to learn how to do it, and then you got everything in between. Right. But it's where beginners tend to migrate to for whatever reason right now, and it's made the market really crowded. So I kind of joke around and call pre-wholesaling what I'm doing, because I think it's just a better place to start, right? I think in real estate, this is the low-hanging fruit that I'm focused on right now. So while everybody else is looking for the wholesale deals, and then the deals with significant equity that they can come in and buy, close on, and then flip for a big profit, after the rehab is done, which is a great way to do business. I do it too. But we've been focusing more lately on kind of the low-hanging fruit that people aren't paying attention to. So we're doing these deals where we come in, take over the mortgage payments, catch them up, resell the house on terms, that sort of thing. And I mean, man, we're crushing it. We're making profits on the front end, in the middle, as we hold the properties, and on the back end when people refinance. So
nice.
So in a nutshell, that's where we're at focus-wise right now. And we're killing it with very little competition.
Nice. So Sean, for those people that have experience, they probably understand everything that you just talked about for the most part. For a new person, maybe a lot of that might have just gone right over their head. So maybe to kind of bring it all together, give us an example with maybe some real numbers of a recent deal. Maybe somebody that was behind on payments, or X amount of payments behind, caught up. Give us just an example of a deal that you're working on or just closed on. Give us some numbers so people can sort of wrap their head around it.
Okay. Well, at our most recent deal, we took over payments on a house that was, and they owed like $177,000 on that particular property. Now that property was actually, and it just came in from some of our, as a matter of fact, came in from the TV commercials that we run. But anyway, so selling motive on behind month and a half on the mortgage PITI, I think, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If you're not familiar with that, so we negotiated a deal with the seller to where we came in, took over the mortgage payments, and actually caught up his back payment. It was a month or two. I can't off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly how many months behind it was.
$2,000 or so, $2,500.
Yeah, because it hadn't hit the attorney's office yet, hadn't hit his desk yet, so it was minimal. So we caught that back up. The guy had actually already moved out of the property anyways. So we caught up the back payments, and the market value on that house was about $210 to $215. There was a few houses in the neighborhood that were listed a little bit higher than that, but true market value was about $215. So what we did is we transferred the property immediately into a land trust. Now, I almost hate to go too much into detail on how a land trust works, because it does get a little bit complicated, and I could probably talk about it to get people to understand.
I'm very familiar with land trusts, but essentially, guys, you have to understand in a trust, to just make this real simple, there's a trustee, that manages the trust. The house is in the trust, so the trustee manages it, but there's a separate beneficiary. And the beneficiary of the trust is the person that really gets the benefit of any assets that are in the trust, right? So the trustee manages it, maybe sells it, and there's, $5,000 of profit or $40,000 of profit, but that profit doesn't go to the trustee, it goes to the beneficiary. So that's the long and short of it. We'll keep it high level. Yeah, but it's a fantastic tool. We've used it hundreds and hundreds of times in the past. And it's a great way to take over payments, work with a borrower who can't afford the payments anymore, and still keep it in a way that it can be corrected through, bringing the back payments current, and then selling it on terms. So fantastic strategy. I love it.
Yep, absolutely. So that particular deal, what we did is that we ended up offering it for sale as like an owner finance type deal. We got $15,000 down on that particular property. We held a note for, I think it's 4 years, basically a wraparound mortgage. And we've got some positive cash flow on it coming in. Looks like the borrower will be able to refinance within 1.5 to 2 years. They had just a couple little credit blemishes, but they were cash rich and kind of credit challenged.
Yeah.
So on these deals, that's kind of the type of person that we're looking for. They could have several different issues that prevent them from buying a house right now, but minor issues, and then have a lot of cash to put down, right? So we got a good down payment on that one. Probably could have gotten more, but so that's what we ended up with. 15 down, some cash flow each month for the next 2 to 4 years, and then we'll refinance. On the back end, we sold it for actually a little more than I said. It was worth around 210, and I think we got 218 or 220 on that one. All right, so
especially 4 years from now, the market's going to go up in value.
Yeah,
when I've done those kind of like lease option deals in the past, which is similar to this wrap you're talking about, like I'll build in a premium kicker every year, assuming the market's going to go up. Of course, the house has to appraise 4 years from now or 2 years from now, but it's reasonable to add some sort of appreciation kicker, because somebody's going to say, well, you have the house listed for sale for $215. I want to buy it for $215. I'm like, well, yeah, but you can't buy it for $215 today. And every year it's going to go up 3 to 7% in value, or whatever that number is. 4 years from now, the house will be worth a lot more. So we just build that into the number. The attorney puts it right in the contract. So it's a pre-agreed upon price, just building equity as you go and paying down the mortgage as you go, which is fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. So money on the front end, middle end, the back end, and then if anything were to happen and the buyer were to, something happened down the road or whatever, we can end up getting the house back and repeating the process. That's not the game plan, but when it happens, it's not a bad thing. So
yeah, for sure. Another thing I love about it too is it's still, according to a lot of different mortgage companies, mortgage banks, the Federal Reserve, about 40% of all the people who apply for a mortgage still get declined, right? 38% or 40% get declined. So those people are obviously candidates for things like wraps, things like owner financing, things like lease options. They want to live in a house, and they have that ownership mentality, right? So Sean, just talk for a second about that kind of ownership mentality buyer versus a renter, and the fact, because people are going to think, well, if I did that, what if the owner has a midnight move out, or what if the guy who's going to buy it trashes the house? And maybe just talk about the mentality of that buyer. Those people don't trash the house. They don't move out because they put big money down and because they want to live there forever.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was about to say, is that these are buyers. They're not renters. They have a totally different mindset, as you said. They want to live in that house and they want to live in it forever, or at least for a long time. They have the pride of ownership now. So they're the ones that are stepping up and dealing with the maintenance on the property, and they're the ones that are fixing it up. I mean, could in a worst case scenario, could somebody, move out in the middle of the night? Yeah, absolutely. But guess what? You just got a house back. You still got that borrower's down payment. You still got the cash flow. You got the house back. Now you get to repeat the process or sell it or do whatever you want. So the risk is very minimal. These buyers are people that we've found over the years are grateful for the opportunity to be able to buy again. Some of them are people that may have lost everything during the recession, 7 years ago, and just can't, as a matter of fact, a lot of the people that we're working with selling these houses to are people that lost their house years ago and ended up staying in that property for long periods of time. Now we're in Florida. So, here when the market crashed, you could stay in a property for a long period of time and the bank just wouldn't foreclose. So the way that things work now is if you don't have 2 years outside of that foreclosure, like even if somebody had filed bankruptcy and the deed hasn't gone back to the bank, all right, people need at least 2 years from that point in time to be able to qualify for a mortgage again. Now, these are people that have already built their credit back up, saved money for a down payment and everything else. Perfectly qualified borrowers, except for the fact that years ago they went into foreclosure and maybe the debt was taken care of in a bankruptcy or something 7-8 years ago, but the deed didn't actually transfer over back to the bank, until like a year or so ago. So they just need a little more time. And these are people that are, again, grateful for an opportunity to own a house, right? Because they know what it's like before they want it, and they can't, the institutional lenders aren't going to lend to them right now. So it's a good niche, and that's not the situation for all of our borrowers, but a lot of what we're seeing right now, it is totally different animal when it comes to these people and renters.
Yeah, got it. So Sean, you've been investing for 20 years. You have a team, you have these crews, you've done tons of fix and flips, wholesale deals, subject twos, curing properties. Probably seen it all and done it all in 20 years. I've obviously invested through multiple different market cycles, up, down, good, bad. Central Florida's seen it all, right? Massive appreciation, massive depreciation. I want to ask you about success. I want to ask you about running not just a real estate business, but being an entrepreneur, being, a guy that just is willing to kind of eat what he kills, runs his own business, take care of your family based off of you betting on yourself. So if you were to look back over the last 20 years when things were really good or when things were really bad, there's probably a couple things that stick out, things that you did well or things that you would have changed. So what are those 1 or 2 things that you think have been the most important things to your success? And maybe when things didn't go well, what are some lessons that you learned of things you would have done different?
Man, I'll tell you, one of the most important things, and you mentioned being an entrepreneur, is persistence, right? And in this business, real estate investing in general, it can be a game of ups and downs. You mentioned that, the markets, my Lord, we've seen the fluctuations here more than a lot of places in the country when it comes to the real estate market. And learning to roll with the punches and persevere is one of the key aspects when it comes to success of an entrepreneur. And that's probably whether it's real estate investing or anything else for that matter. But persistence is definitely a key. And then the other thing, that I've really learned, keep marketing, keep these leads coming in, whatever business you're in, whether it's real estate investing or anything else, and everything else kind of falls into place, right? Because I've found with real estate investing over, and man, it's 20, I think we're on year number 23 right now between my wife and I in this real estate investing game. As long as we got enough leads coming in, we found that we can screw a few things up. Right? A lot of people focus, especially newer investors, focus on, oh man, I don't want to screw this deal up or whatever. So, the cure to that for me has always been, have a lot of leads coming in and then figure out how to make money on all of them, whether the market is hot, cold, or somewhere in between. And you can afford to screw a few of them up, especially if you're doing the business the right way. And you don't have a ton of your own money maybe in these deals. You don't have a ton of liability. So, I think that's probably the first thing that comes to mind, at least.
Nice. Fantastic. So when you were to look back, 20 plus years ago, when you got into real estate, I always like to hear from my friends and guests, like what was going on in their mind when they jumped in? Were they just pursuing a lifestyle, more income, more assets? Were they running away from a job that they hated? Were they broke, busted, and disgusted and just wanted to do something different? So for Sean, for you, where were you at when you caught the bug? What was motivating you to jump into this? And tell me about your first, really 30 days to 6 months. Like, were you scared as hell? Like a lot of us freaking out, like, oh my God, what did I just do? So tell us what your motivation was and what your first couple months were like.
Yeah, my first couple months actually were a lot longer than that before I did my first deal. I kind of fell ass backwards into this whole real estate investing game.
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah, right. I was in direct sales. My wife and I got married 24 years or so ago, and we had our first child on the way. And I knew that we needed to buy a house instead of renting. And as I mentioned, I was in direct sales and sales management. I was not a W-2 employee, so everything was commission-based. And I had some bad credit from a brief stint in college. I didn't graduate from college. I attended for a little while, took partying a lot more seriously than I took college. And along the way, ended up with bad credit, right? So I started to have somewhat decent income, at least what I thought at the time was a decent income. Looking back on it, wasn't much, but just direct sales. So I couldn't prove my income. I had sketchy credit at the time. My wife was pregnant with our first child, Logan. And I realized I need to buy us a house, right? Because we're starting a family. I don't want to continue renting. So I went to a mortgage broker. He pulled my credit and pretty much just told me that I can't finance a stick of gum. Go pound sand, right? So I'm like, man. So I walked out of there.
Can't finance a stick of gum. I like it. I'm gonna steal that if it's all right with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I figured, all right, well, I'm gonna prove this guy wrong, and I know there's gonna be a way to do it. I just don't know how. So I had seen all these late night infomercials, laying in bed after a night of partying or whatever, that said you could buy houses with no money down and no credit, blah blah blah. So what I did, and at the time I really hardly had a pot to piss in, to be honest with you. But what I did, not having a bunch of extra money, is I would go after work, I would go up to Barnes and Noble, and they closed at 11 o'clock every night. So from 8, 9 o'clock until around 11 o'clock for a month or two, I just sat in Barnes and Noble and I would read books about creative real estate that I really at that point couldn't even afford to buy. Right. So I'm like, man, so I was determined to figure it out. But so I studied. And then I got to, my wife was kind of the point to where, you're working all day, you're out selling. You're training these other reps that you got working for you in your sales business. And then you're from, until 11, 12 o'clock almost at night. By the time you walk through the door, I'm not seeing you at all. So we got to figure something out. So I'm like, all right, I got to figure out how to buy these books, and we're on a limited budget. So what we did is on Saturday and Sundays, I would go to garage sales. And this is kind of, I don't know how I came up with this. But I would go to garage sales. And I would buy books, for 10 cents or 15, 25 cents or whatever, that had never been read, right? Brand new books. People just want to get them off the shelf and out of their house, right? So I'd buy a few of them, and I'd take them back to Barnes and Nobles and a couple of the other bookstores, and I would exchange them for real estate investing books, right? I'd just be like, it was a gift. I don't have the receipt. So, whatever. I mean, maybe it was, I don't know, the most honest thing in the world, but it's what I did to continue marriage work and to learn how to do this business. Right. So that's what I did. And then my wife finally told me after, 4 or 5 months of studying, man, look, crap or get off the pot type thing. We got to figure this out. So I'm like, all right, let's find a house. So I went out and I had heard about bandit signs, and I took $200, which was probably about what we had to our name at that point. And I went and got some 18 by 24 Coroplast plastic bandit signs that just basic, we buy houses and a phone number on it. Right. So I put those out. I remember it, man, like it was yesterday. I put them out on a New Year's Eve. Right. So a couple days go by, and I get a call, and it's from a motivated seller. So I'm like, man, this is awesome. We got it. Here we go. Well, turns out that property ended up being in a area. It's part of town called Pine Hills. And it puts you this way. It's not where we wanted to live. It's not a war zone, but it's just not where I wanted to raise a family. Yeah. So anyways, I talked to the seller, and long story short, I ended up structuring a deal creatively with her, because I knew I could probably sell this house to somebody else. I put that house under contract, did it's like a lease option, and then ended up reselling it to an end buyer. That's a funny story in and of itself, and I don't want to go too far off topic here, but remind me to get back to that later if we have an extra minute or two about crazy deals that I've done. But long story short, we put $6,000 in our pocket up front on that. Caught up the back payment on that one because that seller was actually falling behind, and again, I think that payment was less than $1,000. So say we ended up putting about $5,000 net into our pocket. I structured that deal to where we had, I think, $200 a month positive cash flow with the end buyer on that.
Lots of books, $200 a month of cash flow.
Yeah. So, I realized at that point, I'm like, look, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, and it may have taken me 6 months to get this first deal under my belt, and I may have done it without even actually trying to get a deal under my belt because I was looking for a primary residence. But we're on to something here, and I think I can continue to make money with it. So from there, I reinvested those profits, part of them, back into marketing and lead generation. And then I just continued spinning off deals from there. And it's been an interesting roller coaster ride with more ups than downs since, luckily.
Yeah, absolutely. Every entrepreneur has ups and downs.
Yeah.
It's about the end game, right? It's about a friend of mine I was just with was talking about what it takes to be an entrepreneur and scale a company, and I thought it was really cool. He just mentioned three things. He said, first of all, you got to know what you want. Second of all, you got to know how to get there. The how is, the strategy, the business.
Yep.
But to scale a real business, it's all about the who. It's all about who you bring on your team. Because even if you're a really smart entrepreneur, you don't want to be smartest person in the room, especially if you're building a big company. And a lot of times you can flatten out the ups and downs with the who, because if you're in an up, you can continue the up with the right people, the right team. And if you're in a down, if the market's going bad, but you've got good people around you, it's kind of easier to make it through when the market throws you, kind of for a curveball. So interesting take on that. I thought it was a real simple but powerful message. Know what you want, know how to get there, the strategy, and then it's all about the who. So I wanted to ask you about that, Sean. And your team building your business, you've got these rehab crews, you're doing this licensing of your marketing. Maybe talk for a second about your team. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the people that you've come across over the last 20 years, people that had a big impact in your life and what it's meant to your business when you've been around the right people. And then if there's been any kind of negative or thing that went bad and that was related to having the wrong person on your team, maybe talk to that for a sec.
All right. Well, I could go on for a long time about this.
Sure.
And more so with the wrong probably than the right. It's difficult to it can be difficult to find the right people, to put on your team. And I mean, we've gone through, unfortunately, probably more, I don't say bad for lack of better words than good. We've got a great team in place now, and we have for quite a while, but it's taken us a while. And I'll tell you, on one hand, I might not be the best person to give advice on this, because I tend to stay kind of to myself with my wife and I and my family, as opposed to getting out and networking. But the more I've made myself get out and network, the more my team has grown. I mean, we've got a great realtor that we do business now. We got a great attorney that we do business with now. We've got we've got two crews for our rehabs, and they're, after going through, I could tell you I'm sure you could too.
Yeah, sure.
We could probably both go on with stories about dealing with bad contractors and similar issues for the whole day and night. We got a good mortgage brokers on our team and everything now, but you got to kiss a lot of frogs sometimes before you find the right ones. But finding the right ones is definitely key. Getting out and networking and stepping out of your comfort zone to build your team is very, very, very important. I've learned it the hard way in this business.
Yeah. So have I. And when one guy or one gal can make things so much easier, when they own it, they're responsible for it, they're accountable to it, and they do it well, versus somebody who's the exact opposite of all the things I just said, can cause so much trouble, so much pain, and so much delay, and loss of income, loss of opportunity. It's a really, really, really big deal. I would rather, in the beginning of my real estate business, I hired all the family and friends, anybody that could come work for me, and I was all about keeping the expenses down. So we hired a lot of people that were just cheap and inexpensive. And over the last 14 years as a real estate entrepreneur, I've realized I'd rather have less people who are probably cost me 3 times as much money, but who are just absolute A players and that really own their role, own their niche, and they do it whether I'm there or not, right?
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah, and that's a trap that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into. And not even just new ones. And again, entrepreneurs, whether it's real estate investing or whatever else that it is that you're in, cheap typically actually equals expensive. And you mentioned that you just made a good point. I'd rather have somebody that's expensive that's costing me 3 times more than the cheap person. The reality is actually the reverse. The cheap person is costing you 3 times more than the expensive person is. You just don't realize it. And
right.
And it should be an easy lesson to learn, right? Because I've learned it 1,000 times over. But at the end of the day, life's going to teach you those same lessons over and over and over until you finally learn them.
Yeah. So Sean, as we kind of round third base here and head for home, I'm just curious, after being in the business 20 years, I've been in the business a long time. I bought my first investment property in 2001. So I'm going on 17 years. And I felt like, the first 5 or 10 years of investing was all the learning lessons. And then just this last couple of years that we really, really made hay. Like all the mistakes I made in the past, I learned from and finally did it right. So help me understand for you, after 20 years in this business and seeing ups and downs and doing really well and having some challenging times, what does the future look like for you? What are you focused on? I'm curious on what you're trying to build. Is it cash flow? Is it assets? Where are you going in the next, 3 to 5 to 10 years? What do you see happening for yourself and for your company?
For myself and my company, I mean, my business has changed a lot over the years. We're to the point now to where I'm starting to look towards wanting to taper down. My wife and I have raised 3 kids. One's out of the house in the Air Force, living in South Korea now. Our middle son is going to be going into his junior year in high school pretty soon here, and then we have a daughter that's a couple years behind him. So I'm starting to really think about retirement.
Yeah.
I'm looking at building cash flow several different ways. We buy multifamily properties. I've got a lot of cash flow coming in on these pre-wholesale type deals that I got into a little bit earlier. I mean, we're structuring creative deals to where we have a lot of cash flow for a long period of time on those deals. And then the other thing that we're focusing on and have been focusing on for quite a while now is we found a pretty cool little niche here. And you can do this anywhere, probably just about any market across the country. I assume there's probably some in Denver, Colorado area and certain parts of California where the prices are just so high that it doesn't work. But what my wife and I have been doing here is buying these little 2-bedroom, 1-bath block homes that actually don't even have central heat and air in them. And they're we pick them up for 25, 30 grand, just dirt cheap. And we turn around and we rent them out and we're fix them up just a little bit. Anything that could go wrong on those little 2-1s with no central heat and air and 800 square foot houses is relatively cheap to fix. And they spin off $800, $900 a month in income, positive cash flow here. So even if you have debt on that property, you've paid it off in a year and a half.
Wow.
So we've been focusing on that. And I almost wish I would, wouldn't have shared it. I almost like to keep it to myself because for whatever reason, it's a niche that people haven't figured out. And man, we're killing it with that. So that's
nice.
where we're really focused on right now is continuing to do those things and veering over towards retirement, hopefully be able to hang out with the grandkids and sail off into the sunset at some point in the not too distant future.
Nice. Very good. That's awesome. So you mentioned this crazy deal earlier, crazy deal that you worked on, some crazy buyers that you worked with on one of your pre-wholesale deals.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What's maybe the craziest experience on a deal you've worked on or closed, or maybe a deal that you didn't do and you're like, thank God I didn't do that.
Oh man, I could, again, this is one of those that I could throw out all kinds of stories and we'd be here for a long time.
Right.
I'll stick with, to build on what I was sharing earlier though, about that, about our first deal actually and how we came about that. So I mentioned that, we got $5,000 on that deal. I signed it up basically as a lease option. And then what I did is now keep in mind at this point in time, and this was 22, 23 years ago, I was brand new. I probably knew just enough about this business to be dangerous, right? To really screw things up.
Someone other than yourself.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I got that property, did a lease option on it, turned around, offered it as like a for sale by owner thing with no credit, no qualified, buy the house. And I turned around and I sold it like I was owner financing, even though I didn't actually have the deed to that property. All right. Now at that point, I didn't realize that you could just get the deed and take the payment subject to, and I would have no problems at that point. But I didn't do that on this particular deal because I just didn't know better at the time. So got the lease option, turned around, arranged to hold some financing for an end buyer for a couple years. They gave me the $6,000 down, structured a couple $100 positive cash flow. This buyer moves into the property, right? I take about $1,000 out of their down payment, catch up the 1 month that was behind on that particular property. So this new buyer moves into the property. Everything's going good for like a month, right? She makes her first payment on time. Everything's good. She's happy. She loves us. Everybody loves us. Caught up the original seller's back payment. Again, mentioned that before, but just want to reiterate it, that I fixed up the house a little bit, painted it on the outside. The new buyer had totally fixed it up. The new buyer is now having a housewarming party with all of her friends and family. All right. So here we are on a Saturday afternoon or whatever for the housewarming party. Everybody's over there. She's showing her new house off. Knock, knock, knock. It's the owner of the house who I had that actually owned the house still.
Yeah.
And the owner's knocking on the door. What are you doing in our house, right? You don't own this house. Oh man. So
having like a Super Bowl party. The former owner shows up. You're like, what are you doing in here?
Exactly. So that was a minefield that just blew up on me. And it was from not knowing how to structure deals properly at the beginning of my business and not communicating properly with everybody in the party. I mean, now, fast forward so many years later, everything is about making sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on in the deal. And I don't ever want to leave anything, unknown. But back then, that's just how I structured my first deal, and it blew up in my face. Ended up working out, but man, that my stomach was in knots for a few days over that one.
Yeah. Show up at the party and give everybody a beer or two and let's talk about it.
or three or four, right?
3 or 4. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So Sean, you have a ton of experience. You've done boatloads of deals. Is there any kind of advice that you would go back and give your younger former self or some of our audience that might be in the kind of new to intermediate category? What would you go back and do differently, or what advice would you give yourself?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that pops into my head with that question is continue to educate yourself and have persistence in your business, and understand that there's going to be, no matter how good you are, how great you think they are, there's going to be ups and downs, especially early on. Education is the key, though. All right. At the end of the day, persistence and education both. I shared my story with you about how I educated myself to learn how to begin to buy and sell houses without using any of my own cash credit money and just having crap credit. Right. So education and courses, real estate investing courses, people think sometimes they're expensive. But man, I'll tell you, there's probably not a course out there that I haven't studied. And I still to this day continue to buy people's courses, trainers, and residential real estate stuff. I mean, it might cost, $500,000 to get a course. But let me tell you the piece. Here's the way I see it. If you pick up one piece of good information that you can apply to your business from that course, it's worth its weight in gold, because it's going to continue to pay you back for the rest of your life, right? In this business and possibly any others that you move into later on down the road. So education's key. It was a driving factor for me. It's still to this day. I know that I've educated myself far more than I ever could have, or more so than most people who ever go and get a 4-year college degree will, because I continue to educate myself on the topics that I'm passionate about in life and business day in and day out. I have no problem staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning every night reading, and I read a book a week. Education is key. I mean, with real estate and real estate investing especially, continue to study what other people are putting out there that have been there and done it before you, and learn from them. Consider yourself to be a sponge and just soak in all the information and then go apply it to your business. It's probably the best piece of advice that I can give you when it comes to especially real estate investing. Awesome,
Sean. Listen, man, it's been great. It's been great fun sharing stories with you. I appreciate it. If our audience wanted to reach out to you, touch base with you, whether it was for coaching and mentoring or some of your courses, or, licensing, your marketing programs, what's a good way for people to reach out and touch base with you?
Well, I've got, my website is reitrainers.com. That's reitrainers.com. You can find information on any of our training, and also on the licensing product for marketing and lead generation on that website. And Josh, I'll probably shoot you over a link, and maybe you can maybe put it on your site too. Go to Josh instead. I mean, if you don't want to write it down or whatever, go to Josh's site, click there, and it'll lead you to it.
We'll put that in the show notes, your contact information and your site and all that stuff. So awesome. People can reach out to you and connect with you that way. So listen, to my audience that's here, again, welcome back. Appreciate you being back with us again. If you enjoyed this, leave us a rating and a review. Tell us how we're doing. If it was great, let us know. If it sucked and you thought it was a waste of time, let us know. Either way, leave us a 5-star review. Sean, been fantastic getting to know you a little bit more, spending time with you, and look forward to, just building on our relationship. And for our audience, thanks so much for being here. We value all of you. thanks so much for spending time with us today, listening to this, and look forward to connect with you again in the future. So, Sean, thanks a lot. Take care, my friend.
Josh. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Take
buddy.
it easy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.